Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Reed. Let me turn my music on. Hello, everybody. Uh, we're going to have a very interesting conversation about a new antipsychotic called Cobenfy. And we're going to discuss these medications in depth. And most importantly, we're going to see how it different from traditional antipsychotics. Remember,
Right.
traditional and typical and atypical antipsychotics primarily bind and target dopamine. But this one works by different mechanisms. We're going to go into that real quick. But first of all, I want to actually introduce my buddy here, Alicia. Hello, buddy. How you
Hi,
doing?
I'm doing good. What about you?
I'm doing okay. Hey, let me just introduce you to all my patients and everyone,
Right.
their families. So, she's going to be working with me together, and she's going to be handling all of my patients for me. So for what we're going to do is we've come up with this. I think it's a very brilliant idea. This brilliant idea
It
is
is
to
indeed,
create an
yeah.
online receptionist, and so she's going to be streaming for me online. And so, if you need to get in touch with me, you can just go to my online stream. You don't have to call me anymore. Just go to my online stream and contact her, and she'll be able to handle it for you.
Yeah,
You
we're
got
handling
anybody?
everything for
So,
you.
so yeah. So introduce yourself. So tell us all about you and stuff. Whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay.
Alright, I'll be doing all the stuff that'll take for connecting the patient to the doctor. So I'll be on the live stream. You can ask any question. If you have to book an appointment, I'll be guiding you, taking you through it, and setting you up with the doctor. And it'll be a very smooth experience for whoever wants to meet you in the section. Yeah.
Now, hey, you know that this is a first in medicine, right? This is a first.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever tried it like this, and so I figured instead of having someone call and leave a voicemail message, why don't I just have you stream, and then they can just contact you right there. We can take care of it right
Exactly.
there at the moment. And you know what I'll do is just give you a list of things that you will be able to do independently, and I think it's all going to work really well. So I'm really happy that you're here. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Okay,
Yeah, exactly. And I've been really eager for this, so exactly, yeah.
sound good. I know I see Ward stepped on me, but I know she's not going to want to come on camera. So Ward, I'll just keep you off camera, okay? Okay, so today we're going to talk about a new antipsychotic here that just came on the market. Um, medication named Cobenfy. Let's see. Okay. So let me go
So,
ahead and I have Chat GTP here with me. Just go ahead explain the new let's see, Cobenfy. I'm going to focus on this mechanism action. So explain the um, antipsychotic Cobenfy and focus on the mechanism of action. Okay. All right. So this it pulls up the molecular formula. Also, this is it's really interesting. Okay. Here's a detailed explanation of Cobenfy. Um, it's a brand name for the combination of these two medications. After all these years, I still, don't want to pronounce the medications. With the focus on mechanism of action, how it differs from different traditional, how it differs from traditional antipsychotics, and what that means. Um, this is for informational purposes, not for medical purposes. Oh, okay. Okay, so Cobenfy, it was approved by the USDA. Okay, it is a first in class treatment in the sense that, unlike prior antipsychotics, which largely act by blocking the D2 receptor, it works via the muscarinic cholinergic receptors. See, often I use Aricept, which is another medication that targets this acetylcholine muscarinic network. to get the additional benefit, cognitive benefits, because all the antipsychotics focus on the D2 receptors, but it doesn't help us with cognition much. And so I often use Aricept in combination with other antipsychotics to target this cholinergic muscarinic receptor right here. But now they've developed a antipsychotics that only targets that muscarinic receptor, right? Um, okay, the formulation, zolanolone, is a centrally acting muscarinic receptor agonist. Okay, so this is a muscarinic agonist that target M1 and M2 receptors. Okay, the tropsylazine chloride is a peripheral muscarinic antagonist, binding mostly to limited peripheral side effects. So this is okay. So this is a this is the centrally acting muscarinic receptor, meaning this medication only target the muscarinic receptors in the nervous system, right?
Yeah.
The thing with Aricept is that you have muscarinic receptors throughout your body. Aricept targets all the muscarinic receptors throughout your body, but certain receptors are only located in the central nervous system. And this medication targets specifically those medications that are only located in the central nervous system. Okay.
So its mechanism it really differentiates it from other antipsychotic medications, right?
Yeah, because no one ever years ago, decades ago, there was it's called a monoamine hypothesis of psychosis and schizophrenia. So, if you develop schizophrenia, they thought that
Right.
you had one neurotransmitter called dopamine, right? So it was a problem with regulating dopamine. Now, so all of the antipsychotics, the older ones and the newer ones, all of them block dopamine receptors. But this is a This is a medication that targets a different receptor other than dopamine, and we never considered that the other receptors could have as much to do with creating the symptoms of psychosis as dopamine, and this medication sort of proves the theory. So it only
Right.
targets muscarinic receptors. So psychosis is created by a combination of receptors, not only just dopamine. So the previous theory was called the monoamine hypothesis of schizophrenia, meaning one dopamine molecule was responsible for schizophrenia, but now we understand that it's multiple receptors, including the muscarinic receptor, that's also
Right.
responsible for it. Does that make sense?
Really intriguing, yeah.
Now, it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how well you grasp these concepts moving from engineering down here now into psychopharmacology.
Yeah, indeed, it is a big jump. Yeah.
You go from extremes, don't you?
I mean, maths and then biology; those are like on the complete polar opposites. So
Yeah, let me see. Well, hey, I think you're gonna enjoy this ride. Okay, so the dose is like 50 milligrams, 20 milligrams. Okay, so 50 milligrams for this component is xanomeline, and 20 milligrams for this component here, tropsylazine chloride. Okay, so 50, so it goes up 50, 100, 125, and then 20, 20, 30. Okay. Okay, it's taken twice a day on an empty stomach at least 1 hour before. So it's taken twice a day. So here, let's look here at the mechanism of action here. So mechanism of action, how it works. Let me see. This is key mechanism consideration and unresolved questions. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Look, while the central muscarinic mechanism is promising, while we're able to target the muscarinic receptors in the central nervous system that we want, the exact neuronal circuits and the long term consequences are still being elucidated. So, even though we're able to target the muscarinic receptors in the central nervous system, targeting muscarinic receptors hasn't been established as a long-term effective treatment for schizophrenia. That's what it's saying here. Does that make sense?
It does. So it's still under like consideration and under study right now.
Yeah, for instance, whether M1 activation meaningfully improves cognitive negative symptoms remain under study, right? See, schizophrenia, when the networks are hyperactive, they create positive symptoms, what we call schizophrenia, and that presents with hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized behaviors. When the networks are very inactive or hypoactive, they produce negative symptoms like here, where they be apathetic, decrease energy, decrease interest, decrease motivation, you know. so, um, so whether or not the M1 activation, meaning activation of muscarinic receptors in the central nervous system, will improve cognition and or negative symptoms still remains to be seen. And I think we're going to do a literature review on it to sort of look at see if there's any evidence. Okay, the key mechanistic considerations on resolve issues. The indirect modulation of dopamine means the magnitude of dopamine suppression may differ and potentially be more subtle compared to direct 2 blockade. Hence, response might differ in patient. The muscarinic cholinergic system basically dampens the amount of dopamine that's released, and therefore it may have an impact on psychoticism by simply reducing the whole overall plume of dopamine that's released, right? And so the magnitude of dopamine suppression, meaning the magnitude at which the muscarinic cholinergic networks suppress the release of dopamine, may differ. So that strategy may differ than the strategy compared to just direct blockade. So the D2 receptors directly block the dopamine receptors to prevent dopamine from binding. That's one effective strategy of the dopaminergic agents. However, the muscarinic agents, it activates the central muscarinic network that causes the decrease in the overall production of dopamine. But that decrease in the overall production of dopamine doesn't respond the same way in every patient, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't
So
start the
it's
same way, we don't have any long term data about that as a strategy. And we don't know whether or not decreasing the plume is more effective than just blocking the receptor. Does that make sense?
right. So it's yeah. So it's working is like really unique compared to other ones in its own domain, the other medications.
Yeah, because all the other medications just they go ahead and just block dopamine
Yeah.
receptors directly, but this one does it. This one influences the release of dopamine. All right, because the mechanism is new, a brilliant mechanism. There can be unique side effects or risk. Well, I don't think well compare see. I'll go through the Aricept is similar to it. Aricept may be associated with more side effects because it also targets the muscarinic networks outside the central nervous system. Okay, the trials that supported approval were relatively short, 5 weeks, in the pivotal studies. So long-term mechanism effects, like the impact of metabolic syndrome, motor side effect, relapse prevention are still occurring. So this is an entirely new approach, and so we're not sure exactly how it's going to turn out.
Right.
You know, but let me go ahead and let's see here. Let me go ahead and
Right.
mechanism action of how it works. Here's the breakdown of the mechanism by which Cobenfy appears to exert its effect based on current understanding. Activation of central muscarinic M1 and M4 receptors by xanomeline. Xanomeline. Okay. Xanomeline is a muscarinic receptor agonist with preference for M1 and M2 subtypes in the central nervous system. Now
What
that
exactly is M1 and M4?
Yeah, see these are two types of receptors. Let's see here. Let me just go through the muscular with it. Let's see what are muscarinic receptors. Let me just go through here real quick just so everyone to know. Muscarinic receptors are G protein receptors that respond to neurotransmitter acetylcholine and are primarily found in the parasympathetic nervous system. Hold on one second, guys.
No problem.
Okay, so here's the reason why I wanted to do this. So um, excessive dopamine can lead to positive symptoms like hallucination, delusions, disorganized behavior, and sometimes we see agitation and restlessness. And so the strategy, and that seems to be more of a sympathetic overtone. There seems to be too much activation. So we
Right.
definitely want to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. So the that gives things like so much balance. And so if you have an overly sympathetic nervous system response, you want to sort of prop up your parasympathetic nervous system, you know, and activating this parasympathetic nervous system is located at this acetylcholine muscarinic network. Now let me show you here. Okay, here are the receptors here, the receptor subtypes. M1 is found in the brain. You see right there? Yeah. Now, memory and cognition. Unfortunately, it's also found in the stomach too. So you may have, and then look here, M5. Look, M4. Look, primary in the brain.
Right.
Right? So this Cobenfy targets M1 and M4 receptors, but the other receptors like M2 in the heart, three smooth muscles, secretions here, primary in the brain, but M5 primary brain, but less understood. So here, when we want to activate this acetylcholine muscarinic receptor, so Cobenfy has targets of 1 and 4 receptors. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So here we have activation of central muscarinic 1 and 4 receptors. Okay, xanomeline. Okay, xanomeline is a muscarinic receptor with preference for M1 and M4 subtypes in the because these are the ones that are located specifically in the central nervous system, right? M4 receptor activation. M4 receptors are located in brain regions located in dopamine regulation. That's it. That's the reason right there. So M4, so these are the brain regions that regulate dopamine. Remember, this strategy would be to like decrease the plume of release of dopamine. So I see why it involves the dopamine, highly dopamine regulated regions, such as the VTM and the striatum. Okay. By activating M4 receptors, xanomeline is believed to reduce dopamine release in lesions associated with psychosis, thereby directly modulating dopaminergic activity, which is believed to underlie positive symptoms of schizophrenia. There it is, right there.
That does make sense, the M4 one, because that mainly targets the central nervous system.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So it's believed to reduce dopamine release in the regions associated with psychosis. And
Causes, right?
so, yeah, so this is like turning off a regional supply of dopamine, right? That's interesting. Interestingly, because M4 activation is indirect and does not rely on direct D2 blockade, the hope is fewer side effects classically associated with D2 antagonism, such as EPS and tardive dyskinesia. So you're not, see, when you give antipsychotics, they can get muscle stiffness and muscle tightening because the medication blocks the receptors in the parts that's responsible for movement.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
So if like this smooth movement I'm doing now is because my basal ganglia and the motor function is everything coordinated. But if we throw something, and this whole movement is powered by dopamine,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And so if I put you on a medication that block dopamine, I can have some interference with my movement. I may not be able to move as smoothly because some of those things may be blocked. And so that's the type of symptoms we get with these type of medications that block. So they're saying here, because M4 activation is indirect and does not rely on D2, it doesn't rely on D2 receptor blockade, then we shouldn't have to worry about the cluster of side effects we typically have with the traditional antipsychotics. And that makes sense. And you're getting, girl, you're getting this for the first time. It's a lot. You get a lot
Yeah. There. That's a lot of information, but I'm really enjoying it.
to say. Okay, so let's see here. And I try and keep these lectures under 20 minutes and things like that, because
Mm-hmm.
students may not watch them much. So let me move through here. Okay, M1 receptor activation. M1 receptors are abundant in cortical and hippocampal regions. See, your hippocampus is where your memory is at, right?
All
And their
right.
activation might influence glutaminergic and GABAergic transmission, potentially helping negative and cognitive dysfunction. For example, M1 antagonism may inhibit certain GABAergic neurons, reduce excessive glutamate release, thereby reducing excitatory drive to the VTA and downstream dopamine release. That makes sense. Yeah. M1 agonism may inhibit certain GABAergic interneurons, reduce excessive glutamate release by reducing excitatory drive to the VTA and downstream dopamine release. This is really interesting. This sort of like influence the entire system, so
System.
this
Yeah.
and sort of decreases the see dopamine. When you start producing too much dopamine, you get symptoms of psychosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to block those receptors so the networks are not as overactive, you know and this doesn't hit the receptor directly, but it causes the decrease in the entire environment. It sort of turns down the water holes, I guess. Thus the oh yep mhm. Thus the overall hypothesis, rather than block dopamine receptors directly, Cobenfy modulates the cholinergic system, that is the muscarinic receptors, which then modulate dopamine and possibly glutamate circuits relevant in schizophrenia. Sounds good. Okay.
That's
Okay. Let me see. Okay. Let me see. Tropsium chloride. So this is a peripheral muscarinic antagonist. Trospium is included because activating muscarinic receptors, especially periphery, can cause unwanted cholinergic side effects such as sweating, salivation, or GI mortalities. Okay, so this is a muscarinic antagonist. Okay, trospium is included because activated muscarinic receptors, especially periphery, can so if you activate the muscarinic receptors periphery, you can have unwanted side effects, sweating, salivation, GI motilities. These are the exact same side effects I have when I use Aricept to try to hit the muscarinic receptors because it hit the other receptors too. So this
exactly. So these are more
yeah,
like physical symptoms, right?
yeah, see, in Aricept, it hits all of these muscarinic receptors. So look, it's going to hit the heart. Look, it's going to hit the glands, watering glands, smooth muscle, cramping and aching, secretions, controlling glands and things like that. So because it targets these receptors, you can have side effects. So here, this trospium chloride's role prevents side effects by simply blocking those receptors. Okay, trospium is a muscarinic antagonist that does not cross the blood brain barrier. Wow.
Right.
So it
That is interesting.
stays
Yeah.
peripherally, and this is awesome. So you only get the benefit of reducing the plume of dopamine that's released from the medications. You also have your buddy going peripherally, that's blocking the receptors and preventing additional side effects. Isn't that interesting?
That is really is. That also makes it like really unique to other ones because they do have like major side effects, but this one that does it does stand out in that aspect.
You know the people who create these medications. I mean, where are they at? I mean, we never see these people. They're
Exactly that.
always quiet. They never you never see any arguments amongst them, problems, anything. They're quiet in the background of our society, creating these magnificent things. I mean,
Great
strategy
inventions,
is just
exactly.
amazing, isn't it? Medicine is really amazing because the things they do to make progress is stunning, and this strategy is just really amazing. Um, okay, here. Right. So tropium is a muscarinic antagonist that does not cross the blood-brain barrier, so it's not going to have any CNS effects inside. So they're basically blocking the peripheral muscarinic receptors and activating the central muscarinic receptors in the same molecule, in the same medication. This is
Right.
amazing. This is amazing. Right. Okay, the dual design. Okay, the dual design, agonist centrally, antagonist peripherally. That's what I'm saying. Aims to maximize central muscarinic efficacy while minimizing peripheral cholinergic adverse side effects. It's amazing. Okay, why is this novel compared to traditional antipsychotics? Traditional antipsychotics, the typical and atypical, act largely via the D2 receptor antagonism or partial agonism, and often serotonin HT2, 5-HT2A antagonism. Cobenfy does not primarily rely on dopamine D2 blockade. Instead, it uses a different neurotransmitter system, acetylcholine muscarinic receptors, to regulate dopamine and perhaps glutamate pathways indirectly. I mean,
Okay.
it's amazing to know that. Because of that, it may avoid some of the class warnings associated with antipsychotics. Right? Okay, summary of
That's
mechanism.
fascinating for a medication like this.
Yeah, yeah, these things are exciting to me. You know, let me see. Summary of mechanistic chain. Putting together xanomeline, it activates M1, M4 muscarinic receptors in the brain. This reduces excessive dopamine release in key circuits, that's via 4, and modulates cortical hippocampal neurotransmitters via M1. This alleviates positive symptoms and potentially negative cognitive symptoms of schizophrenia because you have less dopamine and less glutamate being released. And then centrally, tropium blocks peripheral muscarinic receptors, reducing unwanted peripheral cholinergic effects such as salivation, sweating, GI upset, while not interfering centrally. The net effect is antipsychotic.
Psychotic, right?
Yeah, so the net effect through a non-dopamine receptor blockade pathway. This is very helpful because many a times some of the patients may not respond to dopamine. You give them the medications, and we may have to increase it several times, and they may not respond to it. But understanding this mechanism,
That
great. Okay, I went through key mechanism considerations. Like the clinical mechanism. Okay, clinical mechanism inclinations. Because Cobenfy works via muscarinic receptors, it may reduce some side effects typical of D2 antagonisms like EPS, weight gain issues, although it still has its own side effect profile. It may it may prove an option for patients who are resistant or tolerant to typical. Yeah, okay. But clinicians need to monitor for the muscarinic, anti-muscarinic related activities, given the cholinergic, anticholinergic agents. Okay, great. Um, I think that's all I need for. I think that's all I need for today. Yeah. So hey, this is a very interesting medication, guys, and I think that's all I have for today. All right. If you have any questions, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. And please leave your questions in the comments section.
section.
I'm not sure how they get to them, but it's there. All right. So I think that's all I need to do. So, and again, Alicia, it's a pleasure working with me. Okay, hopefully it's right. Again, I think are we going to start our streaming today?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's my pleasure to be doing stuff with you as well.
Yeah. And so, are we going to do the playlist like for the streaming for the day for you as a receptionist? What's our plans for the day?
Right.
All right. So, guys, you guys have a good time. Take care. Meet out. Guys, take care, guys. Ciao, guys.